If you've purchased the direct deposit module for CenterPoint Payroll, there are basically two portions to the setup of it. One portion includes the employer side of things, and the other portion is the setup of each of the employees that enrolls in direct deposit. This video will be discussing the employee setup. There is a separate video for the employer setup. We'll go to Setup and Employees and highlight this employee and click Edit. When you have direct deposit installed, there should be a direct deposit tab for each of the employees on their setup screen. You only need to worry about setting up direct deposit for those employees that are enrolling in direct deposit. If the employee is still receiving only a paper check, then you don't need to set up anything on the direct deposit tab. I'm going to click on the direct deposit tab for this employee. Up at the top is an option to print the pay advice for the employee. Now, typically you'd want to print the pay advice for the employee. You'll notice to the right of my direct deposit tab, there is a publish pay advices tab. We do have a module called publish pay advices, which allows you to send your pay advices to your employees electronically. So if they're receiving their pay advice electronically, you might not want to print the pay advice. So if you have that module, that might be when you'd want to take that print pay advices off of there. The top portion of the screen allows you to tell the system how the employee wants their net pay to be divided out. Now, it can either go to a single account or it can be spread out to multiple accounts, or it can be a combination of going to multiple accounts and a paper check. Okay, so there's a lot of different options on how you can split the pay out. Let's say for this particular employee that they want a certain portion to go into a savings account and then the remaining portion to go into their checking account. So the first thing you're going to do is choose what kind of an account the money is going into. So we're going to choose the savings account first. For each kind of account, you'll notice that there's a pre-note option and a deposit option. When you're first setting up the employee, you're going to set them up with the pre-note option. While it's set as pre-note, if you were to do a pay run, they would not get direct deposit. They would still get a printed check. Okay, so if it needs to be at the deposit option in order for them to get direct deposit. But we're first going to set them up with pre-note, and then one of the pieces to getting started with direct deposit, and there's a separate video for it, is to create a pre-notification file and send that pre-notification file to the bank. And what it does is it does a test of all the different accounts, making sure that everything is correct. And then once that pre-notification file is sent to the bank, CenterPoint will change this automatically to savings deposit. So you're not going to have to come in and edit it on each employee. Okay, so we're going to choose savings pre-note. Then we're going to put in the bank routing number. Now, next to the bank routing number, I kind of skipped over the description. Notice that it puts savings in there as a description. If you happen to have more than one savings account, you might want to give it more of a description so you know which savings is which. Okay, or which checking is which. So if you're only have one checking and one savings, then it's probably fine to use the default description. After the bank routing number, and again, that has to be a valid ABA routing number. If it's not, it'll give you an error. And that's just another check to make sure that the employee is giving you the correct information. We're going to put in their account number. And I'm not going to mark this one as the primary account. Only a portion of their check is going to go into their savings account. Okay, so when you don't mark the primary account, you're allowed to put in a percentage or in an amount. Now, if you were only had one account involved, it would be the primary account. Since I have multiple accounts, only one of them can be the primary account. Okay, this one is going to either get a percentage or an amount to it. I could put in 20%, but then if I put in $200, it'll zero out the percentage. So it's one or the other. So you can either put a flat amount that needs to go into that account or a percentage. In this case, I'm going to put a flat amount of $200. The remaining portion of that is going to go into the employee's checking account, and we're going to choose checking pre-note. The checking account for this employee is the same routing number, so they use the same bank account, but it's a different account number. Okay, and that one is going to be marked as the primary account. Okay, the primary account is going to get the balance of what is left. So first the $200 will be taken, and then it'll get the balance of what's left. Okay, so the order that CenterPoint will take things is it'll do any fixed amounts first, any percentages will be based off of what's remaining, and then anything that's marked as the primary account will get whatever's left after that. All right, down below that is a section for deductions. Certain deductions that an employee has taken out might also be deposited into different accounts automatically. For example, like a health savings account might have an account number that the deduction amount can be directly deposited into. In this employee's case, they have a 401k plan that there can be the money can be directly deposited into. So we're going to choose their 401k plan. We're going to put in the bank routing number for it, and we'll put in the account number. Okay, then after that, we're going to choose again whether it's a savings account, checking account, or it's paying back a loan. Those are some of our options there. This one is a savings pre-note. Again, we'll mark it as pre-note just like we did for the net pay amount. Now, this particular deduction is not a child support deduction, but if it were a child support deduction and you needed to include an addendum with that direct deposit, you would check this box and then put in the case and court order number and the FIPS locator code. Okay, so you have those options there to fill in that once you check that box. Okay, then underneath the benefit and direct deposit information, if this 401k plan also has a benefit portion, we could choose that benefit portion to be direct deposited as well. Okay, and that's typically the same bank account number. And again, we would choose this as savings pre-note. So I am done with this employee, but before I go ahead and save this employee, I do want to talk about the option of a paper check. So what if this employee wanted a certain portion to go into savings, but that remaining portion they wanted in a paper check? You could go ahead and for any of the options here, you can choose if they want a paper check, and then that one could be marked as the primary so that it gets the balance of everything. Or it could be that they wanted, $100 to go in a paper check, and then they wanted a checking deposit to go in for the remaining portion. So you could divide it out by a combination of a single account, multiple accounts, and a paper check, or so on. I'm going to change this. I'm going to delete this row. Just did a right click there to delete it. I'm going to change this back to checking deposit or checking pre-note. And so that's how I really wanted this person's to be. Now, it is possible that they didn't want anything to go into one of the bank accounts at all. In that case, what you would have done is chosen check here, and it would have just marked it as the primary, but then the deductions and the benefits could be part of the direct deposit. So if they're depositing something for a deduction or a benefit in the direct deposit, in order to receive a check, you'll take and you'll mark a line as check and mark it as the primary account. Okay. If they are only getting a check and no deductions and no benefits are being made or are being direct deposited, then you don't have to fill out anything here at all. Okay, so if nothing is getting direct deposited, then you don't need to fill out anything. You do not need to choose check up here in the status at all if nothing is getting direct deposited. Okay, we'll just assume that if nothing is here, that they get a check. Okay, so I'm going to click Save on that employee. And then the last thing that you might want to consider in this is underneath File and Preferences. And that went to a different screen over here for me. So I'm going to drag it over. Underneath Printing and Payroll Advices, on the Database tab here, there is an option to print direct deposit amounts on the pay advice. And you might want to select yes for that. Otherwise, it'll just show the lump sum of their direct deposit and it won't show what went to which kind of account. If you want it to show that, then you'll say to print direct deposit amounts on the pay advice. And that way they'll see how the check got broken down. So I'll click Save there. Now, if you've completed the employer setup and the employee setup, then your next step would be to go ahead and create the pre-notification file for the bank, and that is discussed in a separate video.